This video brought to you by boredom. Now, found this Casio CP50 cassette player AM/FM radio down in another part of the basement I don't usually lurk in. I remember having this as a kid. My parents got it at a yard sale before I was born. Sort of been sitting for a few years or so, but battery door and mains power cord have long since vanished, so I wired it into a 6-volt lantern battery just to give it a bit of power. It does still work. Volume control is scratchy from not being used, but
blaze is one of 8 major wildfires burning across Colorado, which is in the grips of a record heat wave.
But it does work. It does make sound. Both speakers seem to function. But out of boredom, I have decided to open it up, take a look at the insides, and then maybe wire in these 16 ohm 5-watt speakers out of an old TV, just to see what it can do. And then probably I'll put the original speakers back where they're supposed to go and send it on its merry way just as I found it. So, on to that. Got the case popped open, just taking a look at what's inside and what makes this thing work. First off, down there is an LA1810, and that is a IC with, if this can focus on the screen there, doesn't really want to, but that is a tuner chip that has all of the radio amplifiers and detectors built in. Has a function switch that tells the chip which band to detect in. Then the supporting components are all in that corner of the board there. Moving on to the center, the camera won't be able to pick up the markings on that IC, but that is an AN7312. Go over here, also found a data sheet for that. That is the recording and playback preamp for the cassette player, because this model also has a microphone on it and can record to a tape, so that IC supports those functions. All of the support components for the tape player, cassette player are in there. And then over here is the power amp section with a KA2209, and that's just a dual power amp chip there. So all the main functions on this thing: little bridge rectifier with filter capacitors, and then a reservoir capacitor, 10 volt, 470 microfarad, teeny tiny power transformer attached to the case, and various few wires. There's the antenna line out to the outside antenna. So that's all on this side of the board. Gonna unscrew it and take a look at the underside. I overlooked this in the previous section, but that red wire there is the positive from the battery compartment, and then that goes down to the socket for the mains power cord, where there is a little switch. The camera can't quite see it in there because it's too dark. There's a little switch that isolates the battery from the rest of the radio when the mains cord is plugged in, thus allowing this thing to be used on mains while the batteries are still installed without blowing up the batteries. Board is unscrewed from the chassis. But interesting way they did the coupling between the tuning, which is attached to the front half of the chassis, and the tuning capacitor, which is attached to the board. They just have that little orange wheel thing with prongs on it And if I can get the camera down there, there's that little black bar with slots on it. And that engages with the two little prongs on the orange wheel, and that turns the tuning capacitor. And over here there's the rest of the actual cassette player mechanism. There's a belt, there's a motor down there, there's a transmission, and actually seems to be intact, so should probably still play cassettes if I could remember where we have all our cassettes. Might demonstrate it at some point. There's speakers. It does seem like I might have a better chance of getting to the speakers if I move the board out the other way. So I'll see what I can do with that. Yeah. For all the empty space in here, it's kind of a tight fit. Got it all wired up. Simply clipped the wires where they come out of the board and go down to the internal speakers, and then attached them to the external speakers there. I got it tuned in to a talk radio channel again because the copyright scanner is going to have some sort of objection to whatever is playing on the radio if I chose a music station, so gonna have to go with some sort of game show on the radio as a demonstration. One thing I did notice is that even driving really nice, gentle 16 ohm loads, this little amplifier simply does not have the headroom to make it much past the halfway point on the volume dial before it starts heavily distorting. And I'll take another look at the datasheet in a second to show you why. I'm gonna turn it down a bit, give it some gas.
I'm sorry, it is the face rug. The face rug? The face rug. Somewhere Chris Martin is weaving into a rug of his own face.
There is the speakers running at a decent listening level, and gonna just turn it up for a couple seconds so hopefully you can hear how badly it starts to distort beyond a bit past halfway.
That's right, you did it! Good job. Rob Reiner's new movie is The Magic of Belle Isle, and it comes out on July 6th. Rob Reiner, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it sounds like a badly tuned PA system or a megaphone. And found out why when I looked back at the datasheet for the output amplifier. There's the power outputs over there. Those are in watts, and at 6 volt, driving a 4 ohm load, it barely makes it a bit over half a watt at 10% harmonic distortion. So, very, very low power amp. As a result, it can't even make it much past 1/2 to 2/3 of the way up the volume knob, even with 16 ohm speakers. With the internal speakers, I'm pretty sure it starts clipping when it's just out of that yellow region. And anything beyond, it makes slightly more noise, but sound quality gets so bad it's unusable. So, that's to be expected. Interesting experiment, and thanks all for watching.